We are live now. Hello again, guys. Welcome to our group. Today we are going to feature amazing artists. Let me introduce first my partners, amazing artist Marcelo,
Hello,
and
everyone.
our amazing guest, Chris Sotomayor. Welcome, Chris.
How you doing? Thanks for having me
How's
on.
everything, man?
Pretty good, pretty good. Just keep them busy.
Great
Cool.
to have you here, man.
We are going to start the first question here. Tell us about your secret origins.
Secret origins. Okay.
It's always a fun.
Right. Well, I was born and raised in New York. I grew up in the Bronx. Um, didn't really have access to art school, so a lot of me trying to figure out my path in art was really about trying to gather information from as many sources as possible. I got hooked into comics at a really young age. That's kind of what gave me a decent vocabulary and taught me to read. I was way more into comics than I was regular books when I was little, and the Batman TV show that helped a lot too. Um,
Oh, great.
you know, and when I decided to start pursuing a career in comics, I again just trying to gather as much information as possible, talk to a bunch of artists whenever I could. Spoke with Dennis Cowan, Jimmy Palmiotti, very early on, Mark Texera. Having opportunities with all those people really helped a lot.
Wow, that's great. And
Yeah, so
what kind of weapons of choice do you use? What kind of materials do you like to use?
Well, starting out, I was really into traditional media, watercolors and acrylics and colored pencil, things like that. Um,
wow.
yeah, well, I got started in comics when they were still doing color guides. So I did a lot of marker
Hmm.
comps and physical coloring work on copies of the artwork. But then as they made the progression over to computer color, I started working with Photoshop, which is still what I use today. So I kind of stick with what's familiar, what I know will work for me.
Let me see.
Okay. What is your secret identity?
This
Everyone in
means like
comics, go ahead, go ahead.
maybe it's like maybe you have a hobby that you like, something that is completely the opposite of doing art, maybe something.
Oh, I love to cook. That's the other thing I do. That
Me too.
yeah, at the end
Here's
of the
another
day,
one.
it's very relaxing. It's a different skill set.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's you kind of just tune out to everything and you get lost in what you're doing, what you're making, and I feel that it connects me to my family and even culturally it connects me.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, next one, Marcelo.
Okay, so uh, you like an artist, we all face different kind of challenges. Sometimes creative challenges. Maybe we don't have the right equipment. What kind of challenges have you faced during your career?
Oh wow. Well, very early on, as I was trying to even start my career, the biggest challenge I have to say would have been my extended family. They were not really like my grandmother. I had aunts and uncles who were not really supportive of me pursuing a career in art. They all thought that you get that vision of a starving artist, and they thought that's where I was going to wind up. And they almost sidetracked me because I started
Oh,
really studying more science and biology and chemistry, and I was even considering going into biochem as a field instead of pursuing art. Um, but at the high school level, towards the end of my high school years, I decided to just double down and figure out how to do the thing that made me feel, alive and passionate and that fulfilled me. So that was probably the biggest obstacle. And then, of
I
course,
see.
growing up in the Bronx, and it's not really the best place to grow up if you're looking for families with money and opportunity. So I had a lot of traditional things in my way also at that time, just trying to make some headway and, learn computers and learn art and things like that. And even trying to be able to get down to a museum, which is a lot easier in New York than it could be in other places like LA. I lived in LA for a couple of years, and I know how difficult it can be to get around. I can imagine what it would have been like if I was younger. Uh, yeah, so any kind of challenges I had in my career were probably more towards the beginning and trying to figure out how to do this thing that I loved so much.
That's right. I think that everyone has kind of similar challenges. I've suffered the same thing. My family didn't support me at all. They want me that I become an engineer, and I
Sure.
actually studied like 1 year and a half, and I was drawing all the time there, not learning anything.
Right.
And then I moved to graphic design. It was a little bit better, but it still was drawing illustration. And then I decided, yeah. So
You both are true fighters, indeed.
You have to fight.
true warriors.
This is art. This is a lot of the art comes from the struggle.
Yeah,
The struggle
Yeah.
right.
to create and to be accepted and to find your way and your niche and to find what you can express and how to express it. That struggle. It's not like the struggle to feed your family or anything, but it's still a struggle, a very real struggle to
Yeah.
find your way.
Yeah.
So right. Well, our next question is, what type of superhero or villain are you?
Oh man, I you never see yourself as the villain, so I'm gonna hope I'm more of a hero. The ones
Yes.
that
What
I
type of?
really identify with are Captain America with his strong ideals, the Silver Surfer with his noble morality, and Daredevil with his ability to overcome obstacles and find a way to be on top.
It's cool.
That's
That's so
cool.
cool. Well, first question for you, Marcelo.
Any kind of right now, like you're like an artist, and what kind of specific like project do you want to share with us that you can talk about? What are you working? Do you have personal projects or you're working with clients right now? Something you want to share?
I just wrapped up the DC Black Label miniseries for the Question, which was kind of a dream come true project because I get to work with Dennis Cowan and Bill Sienkiewicz, who are my two favorite artists in the business. Um, I've had a run on Batman, which was great on Detective Comics, and now Batman Beyond. I'm for the future.
Oh,
I'm also looking to collaborate a little more and do a little more art whole cloth. Before you started in comics, I actually had a little bit of an illustration career. I painted a children's book. I did a CD cover for the Olympics, for the '96 Olympics. I did a lot of development work for animation, even some writing work. So I'm hoping to collaborate. There's a young Latina writer that I'm hoping to collaborate with on something more of a YA graphic novel type thing. So if all goes well in a couple of years, I'll be hip deep into that.
that's so cool. Very interesting. Very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. How do you decide your color wheel?
A lot of it is based on, well, first and foremost, I want to make sure I'm telling the story as clearly and as quickly as possible, right? So keeping that in mind, I try to figure out what the mood of the story is or the scene, and I base my color choices on that pretty much. If something is like super exciting or has a lot of big explosions, I'll use a warmer color palette. Or if it's a night scene that's very somber, like rainy, I'll go with more Payne's grays and maybe hints of like a burnt umber or something, but mostly cooler tones. It really depends on the mood, on what's going on in the scene, even the book. Like something like the question is not a big action movie type thing. So I'm able to go a little more painterly with that, and show more brushstrokes and get real gritty and dark and moody in a lot of places. Whereas, like, I'm working on Deadpool also for Marvel. That's more of like a big budget action movie type thing. So the colors are a little louder, they're a little brighter, a little more in your face, and there are more chances for those big explosions. So that book, I go in with a very different approach, um, in technique and in color palette, because it's such a different beast from something like The Question.
Hmm.
Indeed.
That's so cool.
Thank you, thank you.
So you
Well,
mentioned right now that you have like more. You mentioned like specific word in coloring style, right?
Right,
So
right,
how many coloring styles are you, and if you pick one that fits more for your work, like regarding
right,
the project?
right. It depends on the art. Depends on the art I'm coloring. If there's something that's more of a graphic style, like a Chris Somney or Phil Hester and Andy Parks, something like that, I'll use an approach that's maybe a little more limited in rendering. Not so much with like all these big bright highlights and deep shadows and big grand power effects and things like that. I'll go a little quieter, or something like Peter Krause, like his work. I'll go maybe more with a limited palette, a limited kind of rendering approach, something a little more flat and graphic in some ways.
Hmm.
Like Batman Beyond is, it's Neo Gotham, so I make sure I light up the windows, and I have all these crazy neon patterns in there, so that's a little more showy, a little more
Hmm.
rendered. Something like The Question, there's a much different technique in there. I'm more playing off of what Dennis Cowan and Bill Sienkiewicz are doing, and their stuff is very uh, high energy, very gritty, dark. It's more of a detective kind of thing. So I get to go a little more gritty and dark. My color choices are a little more muted.
I
They're
see.
not as big and garish, except for a couple of places where I need the story to have those really big hits. But I'm following the lead that they're putting down as far as the line art is concerned. The lot of loose brush strokes and pen strokes. So I go in with looser brush strokes and pen strokes on my stuff. Whereas Batman Beyond, it's big bright neon backgrounds with characters dressed in black. So I try to make sure I render them looking slick and a little more high rendered, a little more bigger highlights, and more out of the bottle superhero stuff. Um, I mean, when you're coloring, anything, but comics specifically, you really try to adapt your style to what the penciler and the inker are doing. There are certain styles that just don't mesh. I wouldn't do a high rendered style on Peter Krause or John Paul Leon. Those two people have
Mm.
artwork that's better served when you let the drawing breathe and do a lot of the heavy lifting for storytelling. But I work in so many different styles, and I don't feel it's a compromise to what I do, because underneath it all, it's still the same mentality. I'm still making the same kinds of decisions. It's still my techniques. I just showcase them in different ways. So, I mean, one thing that I always struggle with is like that Japanese cell shaded style. I'm not very good at that, so I'll try to stay away from something like that. But the other stuff,
Mm.
limited palette, or high rendered superheroes, or gritty noir, those are all things that I feel comfortable doing to different levels. And I think that as long as it's the same instincts going in, uh, you can change your style up and really do a service to the artwork. But again, it's all about clarity of storytelling, and you have to be a good teammate to everyone else. Uh, every time there's a step in the comic production process, it's got to lift up everyone else, right?
hmm.
So the writer is going to write to the artist's strengths, and if you have an artist that does a lot of cosmic stuff, with big battles, you're not going to have like scenes in the West with horses, because that doesn't play to the artist's strengths. You put them in those big cosmic battles. You get an inker that's really dynamic and can bring the best out of that penciler, and hopefully when I come in, I can come in and bring the best out of the penciler and the inker and the writer. We should all lift each other up as storytelling allies, as teammates.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, do you get the scripts while you are coloring? You get scripts from Marvel and DC while you're coloring to it make your job easier, or do you just use the art as a reference?
For the most part, I use the art as the reference because there are certain cues in the artwork that I need to make sure I play off of. But I always consult the script. If for some reason I don't have a script for a particular story I'm working on, I'll reach out to the editor or the writer and I'll make sure I get the script from them. It really helps if I have the script. And a lot of times, what I'll do is, as I'm working on each page, I'll read the script for each page, just to make sure that I've got the things in there that the writer needs in there, like the time of day, or if like the smoke gives off a certain color in a scene, or a gas gives off a certain color, or like there's a thing that needs to get the reader's attention. Like maybe there's a prop on a table, like a gun or a bottle that the reader needs to make sure to see. I want to make sure I get that in, and it's not because something like that, if I'm just going by the artwork, I may misread it and think it's just a detail that the artist added to add it. But if I consult the script and I see, oh, that bottle's important, I should do something to call a little more attention. Having the script really, really helps. I try to make sure I have it all the time.
Okay. Well, is there tips and tricks you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah. Look at other art. Look at movies and TV. TV is wonderful right now. Um, try to figure out what it is you're trying to convey and how other mediums convey that thing too. Uh, and also get really familiar with your tools. There are a lot of aspiring colorists and aspiring digital artists who don't really know like their keyboard combinations for different tools. I'd say get very
Mm.
intimately familiar with those things, with the tools that you're using. It makes it a lot easier. It cuts down on a lot of time. It gets rid of a lot of the worry about doing things right sometimes. Just having that familiarity. But yeah, look at everything. And specifically to what I do, um, get familiar with your teammates too. Uh, it's you can get a lot of insight from what your teammates are trying to convey, from what they're trying to do with the story, and that just makes the product better.
That's amazing. Well, I'll
Very
leave the
cool.
next question to you, Marcelo.
Okay, so what I lost a little bit the audio. So
Okay.
you already asked what is the hardest challenge you face as a comic book colorist?
Right, right. That was, I would say, growing up in an area that was not very friendly to the arts. And I would also say, as with any part of trying to get into comics, there is a struggle to be seen. There's a struggle to get your portfolio out to people, to editors, to writers, to other artists. Um, Conventions are great, but you can only do so much at conventions. I think social media is great now because you can definitely get your stuff seen, but it also there's so many other people trying to be seen also, and it can be a little difficult
I hear you.
to get the attention you're looking to get. Um, but yeah, other than that, I would say just growing up and trying to figure out what my place was in art and how to do it.
Hmm. Well, is there a practice colorists, beginners should do to get better into coloring?
Yeah, I would say learn to draw. A lot of colorists coming up now just they don't understand drawing, understanding the structure of the human form and understanding the structure of different buildings and objects, how light works on those surfaces. Just be a little more observant. Look at some photography. You don't have to be able to draw like Art Adams or Jim Lee, but you should have some basic understanding of the structure of things like the face or the way muscle groups work. Keep a sketchbook, draw in it as often as you possibly can. That will help inform your techniques. It'll help inform your approach, and it'll help add more tools to your skills to be able to tell the story and just be a better version of what you want to be.
So
I
even
keep I
as
keep a
a
sketchbook.
colorist,
Yeah, yeah,
so even as a colorist,
yeah.
you should have understand of perspective and anatomy, right?
Yes, yes. It doesn't have
So
to be great, but you
mm,
should understand the way things work. Yeah,
mm,
yeah.
that's fine.
Joints, the way they overlap, the way muscles extend and contract. Understanding how those shapes, like your bicep. If it's out and then it's in, that's different. It's a different structure. It changes. You have
Hmm.
to know how that works. So yeah, understanding how to draw, just the fundamentals.
Mm,
Understand how the face is structured, where the eyes are supposed to line up. How the ends of the mouth line up with the pupils of the eyes. Things like that. There should be an extra eye space in between the two eyes. And that's the bridge, and the way that bridge works and the way your brows work in relation to your eyes, and the shape that this all makes. You should have that understanding. I have a model here in my studio that helps me understand that if I'm
I see.
struggling with something. And yeah, I keep a sketchbook and I draw in it all the time. For a while I wasn't keeping a sketchbook, but I realized that's going to help me later. So yeah, I've got a small sketchbook in the other room. It's just me drawing faces, just trying to make sure I understand every part of the face I can. Old faces, young faces, you know, uh, different brow structures and mouth structures, things like that. So yeah,
mm.
having that understanding really helps.
Okay. So next
That's
question
very,
to you,
very, very
Marcelo.
interesting. How long does the coloring process take you from you? Like maybe a book of 22 pages or maybe one page?
Um, I mean, it depends on the style, of course. It depends on the complexity of the artwork. I'm sure you've heard that before. What I do is I try to structure my day so that I get a certain amount of work done each day. I can sometimes go a little faster than other people, I guess. Maybe because I've been doing it so long. I've been doing this for 20,
Mm.
24 years now, 25 years. So I've got some pages under my
Wow.
belt, some books under my belt. Um,
Wow, definitely yes.
Ideally, I want to do about 3 or 4 pages a day. Sometimes I do more. Sometimes I do less, just because I have the time
Wow.
to take on it.
Three pages per day. Wow.
Yeah, three, maybe
Uh,
four. I have gone as far as 8 pages, even up to 12 pages in a day. I don't recommend it. Sometimes
ah.
those styles are easier.
That's coloring machine we got here.
There are a couple of books that I did in 24 hours, just because I had to make a deadline and I got the pages really late, the artwork really late. So, you do what you have to do you do as many pages as you need to do. I like to have about a week to do a book. I think that's pretty comfortable. That way I can do like 3 pages a day, 4 pages a day, somewhere in there. And, I'll be okay at a week.
Hmm. Well,
Wow.
I'm
That's
going to
that's
ask
super
them.
cool. Like a week for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's comfortable. I can do I can do it faster than that if I need to. I'd rather not because I don't want the work to suffer.
Mm.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, truly a coloring beast you are. Well,
Well,
I'm
like I
going
said,
to
I
ask.
don't recommend that for everybody. And I like I said, I've been doing this for almost 25 years, and no matter what, I still care about what the final book looks like. So I'm not going in and just banging out one page every hour or something. I really want it to look good, and I try my best to always look at like what other illustrators do and other colorists do, and I try to get a little bit of knowledge from what they're doing, and I'll try to see if I can incorporate something similar in my work. I try to evolve and change and get better and better. No matter how long I've been doing this, I have to always get better because the competition's better, the standards get higher, and I want to make sure that I'm doing this right for myself, for anyone that picks up a book and they enjoy it. I also want to. There are times when I get paired up with a new penciler or a new inker, and if I mess up that book, that could really affect their career. Like the coloring could destroy a book, right? The
Yeah.
inking could destroy a book. The
Mm.
penciling could destroy a book. But if any one of those are off, you could really screw it up for everybody. Now, because I've been doing this for almost 25 years, there's a little bit of pressure on me that if I'm working with a new penciler, I have to make sure I do that right. Because if that book looks like crap and he or she tries to take that work to get the next job and they don't get the next job because it doesn't look good, that's kind of my fault, not his fault. So I have to make sure I do right by my teammates, by that penciler, by the inker, by the writer, not just for me, but for everyone. So that's what I mean when I'm trying to be a good teammate, a good ally. You
Mm.
know, everyone should lift everyone else up.
Mm. This is actually the
Yeah,
next
complement each
question
other.
I
Yeah.
was going to ask you about. If you ever get a bad inking, this is the stage right before you, the inking. So how do you fix? This is a question to you too, Marcel. Do you fix inking and contrast errors
Hmm.
with colors?
There are ways to do that.
Mm.
I've had some examples where, like a penciler drew an extra arm, so the inker inked an extra arm on somebody. So, I mean, I see that. I know it's wrong, and I have to fix it because if I were to leave that in, it was a book where Spider-Man appeared, and Spider-Man had an extra arm, right? If I were to leave that in, not only would it look bad on the penciler, but it also looks bad on the inker because he inked it, and it also looks bad on me because I colored it, and then it looks bad on the editor because the editor let it pass. So I had to remove that extra arm because I know that's something that needs to be done. Then there are other times where like a muscle structure doesn't look quite right, or a face doesn't look quite right, or a hand doesn't look quite right. So what I'll do is I'll redirect the focus using color to something else. More contrast on a specific area. If there's a hand that doesn't look good, I'll make sure that the attention goes to the face. Or I'll sometimes do a little outlining with color, to kind of almost correct the drawing, like to just suggest that it goes this way instead of the other way. And again, this is where being able to draw comes in really handy. Because if I couldn't draw,
Mm.
it would be like those painting restorations that you see in those memes where they look horrible. Like there's this one person who restored a painting of a lion, and it looked like a Muppet, and it was horrible. Or this other one with a painting of Jesus, where it just looked like a mop with this raggedy hair. If I couldn't draw it, that's what would happen. But
Mm.
thank God I at least understand a little bit
Okay.
more of the structure of drawing where I can maybe correct those mistakes or just deter from it or fix it. Or I mean, there are times when I've had to add faces to artwork, so I'll use the artist work as a template and then kind of recreate it in some ways. Um, a lot of my
Mhm.
editors trust me with that kind of thing, or I'll let them know beforehand, hey, this doesn't look right. Should I wait for a patch, or do you trust me to fix this? Most times they'll trust me to fix it because it's easier if I fix it because I'm there already. I have the artwork. If I wait for a patch, then I have to wait for the penciler to draw the patch, the inker to ink a patch, and then for me to paste it in and then have it fixed. Whereas if I already have the page open, I can go in and I can draw the patch myself and make the fix. And then it's one person doing it. The rest of the team can stay focused on the other parts that they're doing, and I
You are
just
the
review
last
their
line of
steps.
defense.
Right, right. I really am. Yeah, yeah. So I've gotten used to that, and that's okay. I'm okay with that role. If I can help out in any way, I'm gonna do it.
Mm. Well, I'm going to ask the same question to you, Marcel. I know you are a colorist too, work for a couple of major companies. So, how do you fix inking and errors in lines and anatomy with colors?
Well, I had like an experience that I was working with other colorists in some projects, and for me it was hard. For example, I was working with an artist, and we were making a book, and I play guitar. He drew a guitar that make no sense, so I think
Uh,
he didn't saw a reference. So my like should I leave it like that? Should I not? So it was kind of like that. So I started to put the parts in color that I didn't have, and the the editor liked it, but the pencil didn't like it because so depends of your team. If they say it's okay, like no problem. But if I see there's something that's like it's very obvious, I fix it. And also I like to draw a little bit, so that helped me also to kind of maybe the pencil didn't finish part of the shoulder or something like that. And yes, I use the coloring to kind of put the render to add the volume to our kind of the shape to didn't draw. And the other things that, for example, I was working in a book. I don't remember the artist's name, but it was Vampirella in the pencil using a technique like so so detailed. And Vampirella, like is kind of dark and it's a lot of kind of black and white inking. So it was very hard for me to identify what the objects. So there was sometimes that I was kind of correcting or kind of improving, improvising that. So definitely you have this kind of a chance to fix it with stuff like that. But yeah, the only experience I have like when I have a problem with inking is like I kind of leave it like that sometimes. Depends of the artist. He doesn't mind. If it's my own project right now, well, I just fix it right away. Right?
okay.
Hmm. Okay, that's cool. Well, how do you be a professional colorist material in the industry? As if how can you be a DC material or a Marvel material, an Image Comics material? How can you be that? Anyone can do colors. Any professional artist, any professional colorist can color a book. But how? What makes you a material for those companies?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, you have to get noticed. You have to have your stuff seen. You also, it helps if you have a unique look, a unique style, maybe that they could market. Just something different about your approach that other people are not showcasing at that moment. Like Marte Gracia, he's wonderful. He has a very amazing style, a lot of high contrast, very unique. At the time when he started doing it, no one else was doing that style. Richard Izanov, Dean White, uh, you know, they also had very unique styles. But aside from that, it really helps if you're a team player, if you're easy to work with and a decent person. You don't start insulting your other artist friends on social media. You shouldn't do that. and hit your deadlines. If you always hit your deadlines, or at least communicate with your editor, and communication is key with the entire art team, with the entire production team, everyone from writer, penciler, inker, letterer, colorist, to the editor. You should be in communication with everybody. You can build a rapport that way. You can build a relationship with that team. You can build a relationship with with that editor. Um, Again, be a decent person to work with. Hit your deadlines, all the time, or let them know if you're in danger. Like I said, I've been doing this for almost 25 years. I've never missed a deadline. Uh, and yeah,
It's cool.
that's a tough standard, I know,
Yeah.
but I also know that as a colorist, I'm the last line of defense, and I'm probably one of the more expendable people because I'm not bringing in fans like a writer is. I'm not bringing in fans like a penciler is. A penciler likes a certain inker to work with, so they usually team up. So that's a set team that an editor or a publisher isn't going to break up. But being the colorist, I'm a little bit more on my own. So I know I have to make sure that I'm the best version of myself I can be, in as far as a talent, in as far as a teammate, in as far as a human being, and as far as a professional. I've got to hit all those marks as often as I possibly can. And maybe I'll slip once in a while with something, but I have to make sure that for the most part, I hit all those marks.
Hmm. Well, that's cool indeed. Well, I'm going to ask you this question. This is not a scripted question here. What's your favorite color that you love? And try to avoid using it while coloring a comic because you love it so much.
Oh man, um, I really love orange. Right, I go through phases of different colors where just something speaks to me and it'll just sit in my head for a while. And I tend to use orange a lot, to the point where I try to not use orange so much. But working wise, I find that I've been gravitating more towards different greens, because I've found ways that I can use it for shock value, and make it a more moody green in different styles and different approaches. Like I'm doing a book called Wailing Blade with Joe Mulvey right now, and it's an independent book. I mean, not Wailing Blade. Actually, Wailing Blade was a book where I wasn't using a lot of greens, but Happy Hill with Joe Mulvey. I'm doing that book with Joe Mulvey, for Comics Tribe, and it's a horror book. So I'm working in a lot of dark blues and a lot of like shocking greens here and there to help tell the story. And I think that blue and green combination, or gray and green combination, helps to build that mood. So yeah, I've been gravitating a little bit more towards greens. I think it's funny sometimes that I pay more attention to those secondary colors, like not so much the red and the blue, but more like the oranges and greens and those secondary colors, and even tertiary colors. You know.
I'm using the same question for you too, Marcelo. What's your favorite color that you love the most and try to avoid while coloring a page?
I
You're asking me?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. This question is to you.
so no, sorry,
What's your
I
favorite
didn't hear.
color? What's your favorite color you love the most, but try to avoid it while coloring comics?
I have a little bit problem with the other. So, what is my favorite color and what color I try to avoid?
Your favorite color you try to avoid while coloring a page. I know my favorite color is kind of like purple with a darkish tone, but I can't use it on every page, so I try to avoid it while coloring. That sometimes an editor or a writer just tell me, why is the page looking so purple? The scene doesn't need all these colors in
Yes,
purple, so
yes, yes, yes,
please
yes.
return this color. So what is your favorite color that you always try to avoid using it?
Yeah, in my case, yeah, I have a tendency to use blues and dark colors. So I kind of always try to kind of put this kind of thing in. In other, it's kind of ochre kind of mood. Always put like when I draw my pages because now I draw more that I color, but I always have this tendency to go to blue or kind of ochre, like kind of the sunset kind of palette kind of colors. I'm really attracted to that. So I really enjoy like books that were kind of like, for example, like forest. I always try to put the sunset there, like already kind of like that. And yeah, sometimes I need to mix, but but yeah, it was kind of the thing.
Well, that's funny. Well, scenes you love coloring and scenes you hate, Chris.
Oh man, things I love coloring and things I hate. I gotta say I hate smoke. I
Really?
really hate. Yeah, I hate
Really?
smoke.
I like coloring smoke.
I feel like it's
The
such
thing
a
that I hate the
struggle.
most is buildings.
Buildings. Buildings are probably second.
Buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No.
Smoke. I try
yeah.
to make smoke look
Windows
billowy
of
or
buildings.
yeah. Yeah. That can be tedious. Yeah. I love coloring faces. I think the
Hmm.
structure of faces and the way light works on faces and all the things you can do with faces to help tell the story. I'm always fascinated with faces. Most of the original artwork I collect, I pick the pages that I pick because they have very interesting faces.
Well, I think that's the last of our questions. Well, if you'd like to add anything, Marcelo, feel free to do so.
No, I have a little bit of audio problem, so yeah, I haven't.
Okay. So, we are so glad to have
Yeah,
you, Chris.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
It's amazing, actually. We learned some of the various secrets from the deep kitchen of the industry. Well, well, we enjoyed it so much sharing those knowledge from you, Marcelo, and from you too, Chris. It's amazing to know. So, well, many thanks again, and looking forward to be talking to you again, guys, in a
Thank you
future
very
episode.
much. Thanks.
Thanks to
I'll
you,
come back
Chris.
anytime. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, we both do. We both do.
Great, great.
Well, many
Thank
thanks
you for
again, and
coming and
goodbye.
being here with us, and definitely it was great. Have a great time.
All right.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye. Take care. It was nice meeting you, Marcelo and Andrew. Thanks a lot.
Thanks to
Nice
you,
to meet
man.
you. Okay,
Bye.
thank you again.